recording.
Perfect. Okay.
Oh, something's come up on mine. It says scheduling made easy. I don't know what that's all about.
That's nothing to do with us. That's you.
Oh dear.
Can you see me, Dad?
I can't see anything now, son. I'll have to click on Zoom meeting, I think.
Just
Oh.
if you don't close it.
Well, something's come up here. Scheduling made easy. I don't know what the hell that is all about. Oh, heavens. What's happened there?
Can we log out and start again?
All
No,
right.
no, it'll still be there. It will still be there.
All right. Oh, okay.
Dad, what you could do if you what's
Where'd he go?
hang on.
He's gone.
It said scheduling make it easy. Make it easy. Add Zoom meetings to your calendar events.
Yeah, you can always in Windows you can always shut things in the corner of that dialog box that says that. You can always close it. Yeah.
Let me see. There's a blue thing down here.
Stuart,
no.
you can.
There's too much going on here.
All right, don't worry. Stuart, if you highlight Dad's name in the participant list, you can.
Yes.
Oh no, we're probably going to get into it. I was going to see if we could get. Hang on, can you make me the presenter again? No, maybe. Hang on. Maybe let's stop. Right. Let's stop and join in again.
Okay. Right.
I'm making you the host now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Do that. Make me the host.
Yeah.
Am I the host?
Right.
I'm back in again. I'm back in. I can see you all.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's strange then. So making me the host.
I think that might have been a coincidence. But anyway, I'll what if I do?
I'm a co-host. Hang on, I've been
co-host.
I was hosting a minute ago, and now I'm only co-host.
I'm the Piers Morgan. You're the Susanna Reid.
Well, I've got the legs.
Right. Well, we're both recording. Both recording. That's interesting. Okay. Well, over.
You don't want to record me.
I'll let you carry on.
Right.
You don't record me. You were trying to record Dad. Right. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I thought today we'd talk about your experiences of the Second World War, Dad.
Right.
From
the Second World War. Well, I was thinking of this. Of course, it didn't just happen on the September the 3rd, 1939. Where Hitler had been really, creating merry hell, and we'd been trying to appease him for about a year. So your grandpa, knowing what was coming, correctly assumed, and enrolled in ARP, that's Air Raid Precautions. And he had training, and he became the head warden for a quarter of Paisley, the bit that we lived in.
Okay.
He'd been in the First World War, you see. He served in the 1418 war as a boy. And
was he hurt during the war?
Southern Highlanders.
He wasn't injured or gassed or anything in the First World War?
No, he was underage. And he was in the front in trenches for months on end. His back was all open pores, son, because he'd been in mud for, and they didn't get washed or anything. So it left its mark on him. And of course, they had little food, black bread and a little bit of cheese or something like that. And but eventually caught up with him that he wasn't 18. And they took him off the front and sent him to a non-combatant role, which was looking after German prisoners at Abbeville.
That's right. You told us that last week. So in the Second World War, he was an ARP warden?
Yeah, he had about 6 air raid posts with air raid wardens designated to them. Their chance was to, to communicate, obviously, with the rescue services and to, I'm talking about the fire brigade, the first aid, and the police during a raid, you see. One of the very odd things was that, well, going back to the 3rd of September 39, we all sat round the radio and listened to it and listened to the announcement that he'd been unable to reach a peace agreement with the Germans and we were therefore at war. So, and all the lights went out around the country, and we had what they call blackout, and the names of places were removed because, if anyone invades, you don't want to tell them where they are. And it was very dark, of course, lots of, and you were strict rationing, of course, because we're a little island and we got a lot of stuff from Europe, but of course that stopped and we had to ship it in. So everything was, all foodstuffs were rationed strictly, and sweets. As a child, you missed that, but you had a little ration of sweets. And my parents used to actually give Betty and I their sweet ration, which is very good of them. Petrol was also rationed. You could only get it for essential services and things like that. Yeah. So at first, there wasn't nothing much happened up in Scotland. We heard about it all going, but eventually, of course, it came, and we had 100 bomber raids up in Clydebank and around Paisley area, Glasgow. And we had quite a lot of bombing, and we had one big disaster where a mine, which was a huge explosive device with lots of parachutes, that was the biggest thing they could get. There was the German radio used to do radio service to Britain. It was propaganda, of course, and it was Lord Haw-Haw, and he said he was coming to obliterate the Coates's mills, which was on our side of the town. And unfortunately, the thing that they use to do it, they're not very accurate. The wind carries them because they're parachuted, they're not like a bomb. And when the bomb landed, but he said it came when they said they were. That shows you what command they had of it. When it came down, it hit the first aid post, and 99 people died. My little school friend, John Marshall, his dad was in fire duty at the time outside, and he was severely injured. He had his helmet into his head and he lost an arm. But he was one of 2 people that only survived, and that was doctors and nurses and everything. And one night, that was about a quarter of a mile from where we were. It was just over from us. There was the first aid post, then there was just the...
You must have heard that then. Oh,
yes, definitely. A real wham, yeah. Wondered if the house was going to be there when we got out the shelter, yeah. It was a real bang.
Where was your shelter? In the garden?
Pardon? Yeah, an Anderson shelter was corrugated iron, and it was supplied to us. The men came and dug a hole about 6 feet by about 4 feet, and they went down about 4 feet, and then the rest of it, the earth that came out from the 4 feet was then put on the top, and they were reckoned to be safe, except for a direct hit. That is, for shrapnel and things like that, they were okay, but of course they wouldn't survive. So yeah, it shook all right. The only thing that happened in our house was that what we used to do is leave the windows slightly open at the top, which we were advised to do. All the windows, by the way, we'd had to tape. We had to tape them so they were crisscross, so that everybody's house had tapes, and they had blackout blinds because everything had to be blackout. The ARP wardens, that was one of their jobs, patrolling and making sure that everybody, they didn't have a chink of light and so on. We had a particular problem with us because where we lived we were at the foot of our garden was the railway line, which went from Glasgow through Paisley and down to Ayr and Stranraer. And that was used, ships used to come into Stranraer with American troops, and they'd come up in troop trains past us. And when a raid raid was on, the trains used to go very slow, just and try and keep down the chance of any light showing, because you know, from where they're shoveling the coal to that, they had that covered with canvas, but sometimes you get a light. And of course, they would have loved to get a train. So we used to, my mum used to say our prayers every time when these slow trains come up past us, because they were only about 50 yards from our shelter.
Oh dear.
So it was very effective, though. The only thing that we suffered from that night was that the wind broke the the glass shades of in the bedroom for the lights. It came in and just shattered them, so it was all over the bed. But we never had any direct hit or anything on that. It was funny to begin with, son, because the rules at ARP posts were that the wardens had to leave their helmets at the post. This was a stupid thing to do, because frequently the alarms, you know, the sirens that went off to tell you there was air raid. Unfortunately, in Scotland, it's only about 50 miles across at the lowlands there. When the planes had come over from Norway, they were overhead by the time our sirens were going. We were getting up into our stuff and running down the steps to the shelter, and you could hear the pat of shrapnel from the attack guns around you. So you ran down like this. But my dad had to run right down to the, and of course it took somebody getting killed before they rescinded that and said you can take your helmets home. So, you know, stupid little laws like that. But my dad served in it all the way through the 6 years of the war, and during the Blitz, he went to Clydebank, which had really suffered the worst. It was really flattened. They'd really peppered it with incendiaries and things like that. You might not know, but it went from big bombs to small incendiaries, which could start a fire. And they used to send these down just in showers. And then they got really nasty and put anti-personnel bombs that kids would pick up and then blow up and kill them. Yeah, so you were warned about that. As for my part of the war, Betty and I, my sisters, we enrolled in the ERO, the Emergency Relief Organisation. And we had a band ERO, and we were with our cycles. It was our job during the Blitz. If the phone lines were down, because we only had telegraph poles and things like that. I didn't have radio. And so if the communications were out, our job was to report to the school, which was just up the road from us, you know, about 40 yards, and report there and take messages from and to the fire service, first aid, police, ARP posts, and so on. It was a bit chaotic at times, because you know, schooling took a hammering, because sometimes you'd be up all night, you see, and the all clear wouldn't go to about 5:30 or something. They usually came over. We very rarely had day. In fact, I can't remember a raid that was a daylight raid. It was usually at night, in the middle of the night, very unpleasant when you get up waiting for this. And we lived next to, well, I would suppose it would be about 700 yards from the gasworks. And our siren wasn't a traditional electric sirens which go, woo, like a sine wave.
Yeah.
It went, and the all clear was a steady note. But you know,
Okay.
you're waking up to the middle of the night, 1 o'clock or something like that, and you have this, you know. But we were all ready. You know, my mother would have us all ready with all our stuff and our gas mask and everything, all ready to put on quickly to get down to the, you know.
And these shelters, I mean, they weren't. It wasn't comfortable accommodation, was it? It was presumably damp and.
Oh, it's damp. But what we used to use is a flower, ceramic flower pot with candle in it, and a candle and a smaller pot on the top, son. That's
Okay,
what
yeah.
we had for light and heat. There was
God,
no
it doesn't
heat.
give you any heat, does it? A candle. It doesn't give you much heat, a candle.
Didn't give you much heat yet. We were well wrapped up. We were really wrapped up, very thick. You know.
But this is Scotland as well. It's not even like the south coast of England.
Very, very cold. Very, very cold. Our neighbour downstairs, because this was a flat, you see, we lived in, and downstairs was an old lady and a widow. She's come from Ayr, Southern Ireland, and she was very heavy, and her daughters used to come up. Of course, we'd be in our shelter, and their shelter was facing us, so they were like that, and you come up and went into this. And you could hear her coming up like a train. She was an Irish Catholic, and she'd, "Hail Mary, Mother God, Hail Mary, Mother God, Hail Mary, Mother." They got louder and louder and louder until she came up. And then we were backing her into this, which was only a square like that. You know, she was trying to get through this and down these little steps. You know, I mean, really, it was quite a. The two of our kids, we were all trying to keep from laughing. You know, my mom was saying, "No, yeah." But yeah, so sometimes school was just abandoned. You know, you couldn't go to school
because all the kids would be in the same state, wouldn't they? They'd all be.
Oh yes, yeah, exactly. So yeah, there was quite a bit of damage, and my dad did a lot. He thought he might volunteer to go into the army halfway through, but he was 50 odds, and so it was, you know, and we cried and said, "No, you don't have to do it." So he decided not to do it.
And your father, didn't he once go somewhere else? With the ARP?
During the Clydebank Blitz, he had to go down there to assist. They needed everything. It really was extremely bad. They just flattened parts of it, son. And so he was away, and I think he went Thursday, and by Saturday morning he hadn't come back. So of course, you know, communication wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
You just didn't hear anything. So on Saturday, me and my mate Billy Smith, we got on our bikes and we cycled from Paisley into Renfrew. Mad idea that we might see him. You know, and,
how old were you?
Pardon?
How old were you?
How old was I? I was then about 14. 14.
Yeah.
And we went down the Renfrew Road, but halfway down, and suddenly there was an unexploded bomb went off, and the blast blew both of us off our bikes. But we weren't hurt. We just, you know, it was like a wind. So, oh dear. So we got up, and a policeman came along and said, "What are you doing here?" And we said, "Oh, I'm just coming down home to see my dad. He's been gone, came from Paisley, and he's down here helping in the ARP." He said, "You get back to your mother." So that's what we did, because he watched us go.
You're having been blown off your bikes once, you don't want to risk it again.
Yeah.
No. And you used to look for shrapnel
during the war. I became of age to join the Army Cadets.
Yes.
So when I was 12, 2 years into the war, I joined the Army Cadets, and I trained in the Army Cadets, and really loved it. It was really good. It was really very, very good. training we had. We used to do commando training and go up and do battlefields on the hills around us with the Home Guard. And we had a big gun we used to pull around called the Smith gun, four-wheel thing from, I think, the South African campaign. Didn't give us any guns or anything like that, Boer War things to do. But and I did my Set A Part 1, which meant that if I'd been, when I get of age and I wanted to go into the army, I'd have gone straight in as a Lance Corporal and wouldn't have needed the training to go for the initial training, because I'd done it all. And I was trained in unarmed combat as well by the commandos, Marine commandos
Does that ever come in handy?
Pardon? No. It was about killing the dreaded Hun.
Oh, I see.
Everyone believed then that the only good German was a dead un. That's what we thought, right? But we did learn some really good things. You know how in a sports hall you used to have these bars all up there, going up about 12 feet. Well, on the first day of our course on unarmed combat, that's what we learned to do, to jump off the top and roll, because it simulated coming down in a parachute, and how you had to learn how to roll with it so you didn't break a leg and things like that. It's amazing. We learned all that, and unarmed combat was very good, but it was very, very rough. It was like, tearing people's eyes out and tearing their mouth open and things like that. Pretty awful.
Yes. And you used to collect shrapnel when you were a boy?
Oh yes, shrapnel. Right? Yes, all sorts of bits. And pieces. Yeah.
Oh, and you said you didn't get.
Pardon?
You said that you didn't often get night raids, but you did see a plane come over during the day.
We often got night raids. We never got day raids, son.
Yeah, but you said you saw a plane come over once in the day.
Ah, that was different. That wasn't a raid. We were out. Betty and I and our friends were out at the local park with the pond, Bashaw Park, and we were on the ice there. And unexpectedly, this was a Saturday morning. We did have an ice rink in Paisley, but this was just in the middle of winter. We had this ice rink, this pond, and it froze over. So we went there, you see, and didn't cost us anything. But the sirens went, and we had to go in the park. They had some there, so we went in, and unusually, it was a single plane. It was just one plane, and it flew It flew, if that was the coast, and that was Glasgow up there, it flew across like that. And we told our parents afterwards, and of course it turned out it was Hess when he went to the Duke of Hamilton, and they landed there, and he was imprisoned. But he came to speak to Churchill. He'd met Churchill somewhere, and he thought he could broker a peace deal, because he never thought Britain and Germany should be enemies. He was very partial to British. He had British friends, but they kept him. This is a bad thing that happened. They after the war, of course, there was a trial, and many of them were just had the death penalty. But he was given life imprisonment, although, as far as I know, he did nothing of the war or the atrocities. He was the assistant to Hitler, Hitler's right-hand man. But he himself didn't, he was, and he died in Spandau prison in Berlin.
Yes. He was the last prisoner there, wasn't he?
Pardon?
He was the last prisoner there at Spandau Prison.
He was the only prisoner there, son, and we took it in turn to be responsible for Spandau Prison, and that was why he was kept there. I think it was a ruse by the Russians to keep their foothold in what was Western Germany. Yeah, but it was difficult. The funny thing is that with all the effort that was made, we all had enough to eat. What we did is everyone was encouraged to get every little bit of space in their garden and produce vegetables and produce your own vegetables. And then any waste vegetables, you were encouraged to get it and save it up and give it for the piggeries and things like that. But, so we grew our own potatoes and rhubarb and, as much as we possibly could.
What was the atmosphere in the war like? I mean, it went on for 6 years, didn't it? I mean, you can't stay depressed and anxious for 6 years. Presumably, you have some good times and bad.
We had good times when they had all the bombing. My parents used to encourage Betty and I to go on youth hostels at the weekend. So we'd go down on a Friday after school and shoot up Loch Lomond and go to the Scottish youth hostels. Only £6 a night. You take dried milk with you, dried potatoes and all the stuff with you, take your food. You lived in a dormitory and it was nice, out in the country. So we did that quite a lot. I mean, we tried to live as normal a life as possible. We didn't have it as bad as the south, of course, which was so close to France. The planes had to come across from Norway and places like that to us, But you could tell the sound of them. It was so different from our planes. It was a whoa, whoa, whoa. You could identify Dorniers and so on by the sound of the engine. We had such a lot of stuff around us, and we had at Bishopton, we had a huge explosives factory making explosives, and frequently, they went up because somebody lit a cigarette or something, But they had that at Bishopton. We had Rolls-Royce with an aero engine, so there was always a noise 24 hours a day because the engines went on test beds when they were made and were run. So we always had this in the background. You could always hear these engine noises all the time. We had shipbuilding. We had, a huge amount of industry. The reason they went for coats was it was a silk mill, made silk, and that for all the parachutes and stuff, for our airmen, things like that.
Yeah.
So, but yes, it was. The war was, well, it wasn't too bad for us. We had our bad times, I suppose. My parents had to go out and work because the men had gone to, so my mother, although she was older, still had to go back to work. So that meant that Betty and I, we did all the shopping on a Saturday because people worked Friday till Saturday lunchtime. And we did the shopping on a Saturday. We were up by a lark on a Saturday to do the shopping with all our ration book and our rations. And we had a list at the butcher, and then the baker and the greengrocer and so on. We did that, and then we used to get sixpence a week. And normally, during the summer and things like that, we'd go to the ice rink on a Saturday when you could get in for sixpence there because it was just before they refroze the ice. So it was a bit watery. So you had Saturday mornings were for the kids.
Sorry if you heard the sound. That was my phone just going off.
That was my phone too.
President Biden has just been sworn in, so Trump is no longer president, which is good.
Oh, how they get such an unintelligent, such an idiot, absolute bloody dunderhead. He's so thick how he managed to get to be president, I'll never understand how he managed to pull that off, because he hasn't got the intellect, son. He can't argue or anything. He's just impossible. He really is a dunce. I would say he was a dunce, definitely. Not intelligent. He makes such stupid statements.
He does. He did. Well, he's
done a lot of harm. He's done a lot of harm. But when I was at sea and went to America, they in 1952, and they still had separation down in New Orleans for blacks and whites. Yes. And occasionally the Ku Klux Klan was still killing people. So the South was really extreme whites down there, son. Not nice, not nice at all. I wouldn't like to live in America. It's not the democracy I know we've got here. But how we managed to get our guy, and he's a bit better, but he's not the best, is he? Let's face it.
He's not. But let's get back to the war. Did we lose anyone from our family during the war? Because I mean, you had a
very fortunate we didn't, son.
Wow.
Very fortunate.
Very lucky.
Yeah, and in the First World War too, the only one that we lost, son, was the uncle that we went to see in St. Omer.
Oh yes.
You know, we found out that he died there. He was a young person. He was just 19 when he died. Yes. But that's the only one that I know of, because in your grandma's family, the Beatons, there was 10 of them. Bob was in the Navy. Yeah. And he was on, I can't remember now, and in the First World War, he was on this big battleship. And he was strapped to the guns, but he came out of it. It was the Battle of, where was it now?
Not Jutland.
Jutland, yeah. Yeah, Bob was at Jutland. It was a gunner. Yeah. And he came through it. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
And Uncle Alec, that's the eldest one, he was in the Flying Air Corps. But by that time, he was in the Flying Air Corps in the First World War, and dropped bombs like that,
really,
out of his seat and over the side.
Was it a Sopwith Camel or something?
Yeah, that's right. That's it. Yeah. And he had, I think I've got a photograph of him. He got sort of riding breeches on and a leather helmet with goggles and things like that. Yeah. And he was invalided out because of flying at altitudes without oxygen. Oh, okay. He got a complaint that invalided him out. So he went into the AID, Air Inspection Department. Every plane has to have a certificate before it flies. Yes. And that was what and he became the chief of Croydon, which was the London airport. Yeah. And then he came up to Paisley.
Did anyone fly? I seem to remember you mentioning someone flew a mosquito.
Plane. No, that's one of the priests, assistant priests.
I see. Okay.
He flew mosquito and he crashed and he had burns, and he was one of McIndoe's people, who rebuilt his face. It was very, very good. But so Abbott Cinch, which started off the war as a small grass airport. Yeah. It's 1939. It was just grass, and I think there was sharks and swordfish could take off from there. But as the war went on, the planes became bigger, so they put concrete down, and then they had to extend it, and that is now Glasgow Airport. But and they built it right up to the foot of our road, Glasgow Airport. So,
what was the name of your road?
It was called Green Hill Road. Right. And I was born at 94. If you go in on Google and you'll see it, and you'll see the motorway now and the airport. But it used to be that there was a road went right up. Well, it would have gone through the centre of the Glasgow airport, because it was the road from Paisley to Greenock going that way. But now it has to do a huge work around it.
Okay.
But yeah, it was. I mean, I do remember the beginning of the war, and I remember the end of the war was really fantastic. We lived in Paisley Oval, and we were out nearly all night. You know, it was about 1 or 2 in the morning when we were eventually brought in by our parents. We burnt a hole in the road. We had such a big bonfire. It built the tarmac. I wonder if you went up there, if you'd see it today. But,
probably not. No. Probably tarmacked it by now, but.
And then I had tried to get to sea the year before, but when I became 16, my 16th birthday, they said I could go, so I applied and I was accepted. And I went to the School of Navigation at Glasgow for pre-sea training in September 1945. But before we went there, we went on a holiday to my dad's place in Kirkcaldy on the East Coast, and we saw Hitler's yacht being brought in through the Moray Firth. That's the one that goes up Leith in Edinburgh under that big bridge. And we had VJ night there. That was VE night was in May, and September was VJ night, the end of the war in Japan. So that was the real end. So I don't know if there's anything else I can tell you about.
Did you ever see a Zeppelin? Did the Zeppelins come over?
Pardon?
Did the Zeppelins come over?
That was the First World War, son. First World War. It was all planes. I mean, they were just like, you know, when they came out of the shell and when they had the Blitz, it was just, you know, just wave upon wave of them. You know, they looked like midges up there. You know, they're doing it from height.
And I suppose because it was at night, you didn't see any dogfights above you. They didn't bother sending.
But the searchlights, of course, were, you know, fire. Were working with the anti-aircraft, you know, to pinpoint, you know, catch them and then shoot at them. You know. But I didn't see. Nothing landed near us. Just shrapnel. That's all.
I mean, and that was from the gun.
Gun? I mean, none of our family were killed, but I mean, people were killed near us, you know, not far from us. A house bombed and the family were injured and so on, but they weren't our family or friends. And yeah, very fortunate in a way. Betty and I, at the beginning of the war, we acted as victims for training for the ARP and the first aid. And that's why it was very upsetting when the first aid post got kept, because I knew the people at the first aid. And the WRVS, there was drivers there. The WRVS got these little cars with canvas stops and four stretchers in it. If you can imagine, you know, just like a Jeep thing. And just canvas down the back. And I always remember waiting there with, you know, I had something up and saying, you know, fractured skull or something like that, and we were standing there and waiting to be loaded up, and they were bringing these up, and there was this WRVS there, and she let the clutch out, and the bloody thing put forward, and an empty stretcher came flying out the back. And so when I was inside, I was hanging on like from death. But I had been up to that first aid post. They were really nice up there. They were what they call VADs, you know, volunteers, and but a lot of doctors were there, you know, to head it up. So we lost a load of doctors. it was quite a bad blow.
Yes.
I mean, so we had bombing and lots of people killed, but none of our family.
Well, you're lucky, very lucky.
Very fortunate.
Thank you. We'll meet again next week for your next update.
Yeah, fine. Look forward to that. Are you okay, son?
Yes, I'm fine. We'll
I had to because I've heard about people being vaccinated and I hadn't heard anything.
Yes.
I went online to Flansham Park, but you can go on to www.Flansham Park Health Centre, and they've got a communication thing that you could send an email.
Yes.
They sent an email saying that early on in the year I hadn't been able to take part in a vaccination trial.
Yes.
Because they hadn't got my details correct, and I'd been down and given all up to date. Can you just confirm that my correct details are with the centre and with the NHS who are doing the calling in?
Yes.
And within an hour, they had come back and said, yes, we've checked it, and your phone number and everything's there, and we'll be getting in touch with you as soon as possible.
Okay.
So I'll just have to wait for it. It's funny, I don't know what it is, what the criteria is, but I just thought that, they'd have done the oldest ones first, but I think they're probably just doing it alphabetically.
I think, and certain parts of the country have a different demographic. So, the South Coast, there's an awful lot of old people to get through, but specifically West Sussex is very slow at rolling it out.
Yeah, apparently the supply of vaccine hasn't been reasonable in this area.
I suppose also it's a lot easier in a big city where like little market towns and the little villages
and these huge stadiums that they do. And
oh well, keep safe, and hopefully we can get back to normal fairly soon.
Yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it? It'd be nice to just have a cuddle and so on, see each other. But thanks very much. And thank you, Graham.
Sorry,
Thank you. How's Max? Are you okay?
Yeah, Max is good. He's fine. He was
and the girls?
Yeah, Ellen's had her first day at work today. So she started at St Richard's today.
Oh right.
She's in the Bosom ward, with people who have been in contact with someone who has been COVID positive. So they are, I suppose, suspects.
That's a nice development, seeing the hood that they've developed in Southampton University, isn't it? It's been rolled out against the country. That's a really good. You can see that it's got the right thing, a soft hood, but a hard visor and an extraction unit, circulating good air. It must be quite helpful for the nursing staff. That the sooner they get that, some of it looks so inadequate for the job they're doing. The intensity of viruses around them must be terrific, and yet you see them sometimes. You think, God, that's not much. They just got a little thing on. Got nothing over the hair or anything. I think, wow, I wouldn't like to be there.
Well, when you go into hospital, I mean, my mask is like, I've put an extra filter in it, so I don't know how good it is, but it's got like at least 3 layers in it.
Yeah.
But when you go into the NHS, they now say you need to take that off and put one of their little flimsy ones on.
Yeah.
So,
but then you have to throw it away.
Yeah.
Only use it once.
Yeah.
So how is Max's arm?
Yeah, he's all good. He had his X-ray. He's got the cast off, so now he's in a a small sort of Velcro brace. Sorry, that's gone out of focus again. Yeah, so he's happy. He's all right. He's on the mend.
Good.
Yeah, good.
He can wash his arm now.
Yeah, a bit stinky.
Yeah,
I bet it was.
Graham, the ancestry that I've got, you said you can get access to it, can you?
Oh,
well,
I'd imagine you haven't installed anything on your laptop. It's in the. I don't know what you've signed up.
No, it's only on the web, Sam. I can. There's nothing in the computer. I have to log on to the site, and everything is up there on the site.
Exactly. So if you can do that from a computer, then anybody can do it from.
Can they? Right.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, you're logging in with a username and password onto the site, aren't you? Yeah. So if you shared it, anybody could log in and as you on the site and see the same information.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
All right then.
See you.
Okay.
Thanks
See
again.
you later. See you later, Stu. Bye.
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 Bye.